to the universe. It's been here for about 13 billion years. It has 100 billion gorgeous evolving galaxies. Each one of them has about 100 billion glorious living stars. And we just found out over the last few months that on average there's one planet for every star. Until recently we thought maybe there weren't really a lot of planets at all. So that gives me hope. But this is the only planet that has life, for sure. It is a beautiful blue-green ball drifting in the immensity of the universe that has given rise to life, the only place we know of it, in all its magnificence and beauty, possibility, immensity. Well, something interesting happened last fall to this part of the universe. It got occupied. And I think what that means is that our imagination was occupied in a good way. For the last 500 years, we've been hurtling towards absolute collapse. We've been moving at very fast speed into a wall. More of everything, growing exponentially. Oil was first commercially exploited in 1880. 1880 in Pennsylvania. Well, that kind of came and went quickly because we got about as much oil out of the earth as we're ever going to 4 or 5 years ago. That was quite a fast boom and bust. Well, all of the systems are the same. We've been hurtling faster and faster into a complete breakdown of every system around us. And for a while that was kind of a frightening thought, to me anyway. It took me actually years to kind of play with that and realize, you know what? It's not working that well anyway, so let's rewire it and reimagine it. It's actually not that frightening. And the themes I'm hearing today are so inspiring to me. What all of you talked about at the World Cafe, the posters, the poems, you're all here. You're all ready, not just to say, we're hitting this wall, things are collapsing, and just kind of fall apart with that. You're there. You're warriors now. You accept that this defines life in this time, and there's work to be done, and let's get to it. And to me, it's an incredible cultural shift. I think just over the last 2 or 3 years, we're hearing these huge themes here and elsewhere. We're hearing the themes around thriving. I love that. It's not just kind of, sustaining ourselves or just barely getting by. Thriving. Let's claim that. Beautiful. Because as we've hurtled towards this wall, we weren't thriving. Stephen told us last night some very sobering statistics. I looked this up myself last week. The United States has the highest incarceration rate in the world, only surpassed by the Soviet-era Gulag system. This is absolutely absurd. It's insane. It's not working. We don't have healthcare meeting the needs of people. People are falling through the safety net. And this in a country that's generating still as much GDP per capita as virtually any country in the world. That number is meaningless. It hasn't worked. So here's something else that Occupy was about. I think below the kind of incoherent statements from the movement, it was trying to say growth itself no longer makes sense. Economic growth isn't the core. That's not what human life needs to be about. On the other hand, all we could imagine until recently was, well, if you don't grow every year exponentially, you collapse, right? Doesn't that mean recession or worse, depression? And uncontrolled collapse is not a good route either. That doesn't work. So wasn't Occupy saying something else? Those are both dumb designs of an economy. If you were trying to design a way to burn up the planet, you would design the rapid growth model that concentrates wealth and power. Perfect. Done. We know how to do it. And we got most of the way towards blowing it all up. Well, let's not do that. Let's not design a system that also gives us some terrible collapse into real pain. People thrown out of work, people losing safety nets, connection. No, we don't want that either. Occupy is about something else. That whole huge space of a thriving, resilient future. Now, practically, probably the GDP could decline a little bit per person in the overdeveloped world, like much of Europe and the United States. Overdeveloped. There's too much of everything already. But it's so inequitable that there's actually enormous scarcity too. So let's set ourselves some reasonable challenges as we make this transition to a world that works for all of us, where we all can thrive. Let's imagine ways that not only can we get off an endless consumption increase cycle, we can take care of people that have fallen through, that genuinely don't have enough. Enhance social equity. We're one of the least equitable countries in the world, and it's having enormous impacts on every level. So let's focus on more equity as part of a redesign for a transition economy. That way we can meet more people's needs. More people will be happier at their core than now, and there'll be less stuff, less running into the wall of global ecosystems. So transition is another key theme I'm hearing. Transition. And it's beautiful. And this is something I just figured out this morning. I've been thinking about, okay, it's this thing we do. We have to do this. It's the defining challenge. But just being here, I'm realizing it's joyful. There's so much that just doesn't work anyway. Why not really move to an extraordinary world? And the thing about it is, it will probably take about 7 generations to work through this transition. So there's a lot we need to do immediately to hold steady, to keep the magnificent, the biodiversity, the cultural diversity, the linguistic diversity around us. There's so much we need to do to hold that as we move into a more constrained world. But over these next few generations, as we begin to learn interculturally, learn generation after generation how to be as a species in the universe for the first time on a full planet, as we do that learning, generation after generation, we can reach an extraordinary communion and dialogue with the entire planet. And this is just the beginning of that journey. We don't have to get it all right away. As we learn our way there, we'll get better at it in so many ways. So resilience along the way. Again, if we focus too much on just the resilience, like things are going to get rough in our lifespans, yes, they will get really rough. On a practical day-to-day level, we should be thinking about how we can get food systems working when we can no longer depend on cheap food from halfway around the planet. I mean, that's very practical. Let's prepare for all of those things. But it goes so far beyond just resilience, because we will work our way through generation after generation through these difficult times. And every year that we keep learning together and sharing respectfully, compassionately, building this kind of world, every year like that is a gift. It's 1 year closer to really grounding ourselves deeply within the fabric of life, within the story that the universe has been telling itself for all these 13 billion years. Connection, networks, these have been key themes for us. Also, just try something. I love that. Just do it, someone said, but that's already owned by a corporation that shall be nameless in my own backyard. Just try something. Try something. Just do it. Just set out, see what happens, gather folks along the way, see if resources manifest, try 100 different experiments. This is how I run my life. This is how I run my own company. We keep trying different experiments. What's going to work? The interesting thing is each year it changes. What was interesting last year, it's like, fine, we've learned that, let's move. And with our digital connectivity, one incredible thing is a good social innovation is there planet-wide within days. Actually, it's gotten down to within hours at this point. So Occupy was something like that. Just within days, it had utterly transformed the consciousness of the planet. And we see these kinds of leaps of imagination all the time. I just spent time with Ward Cunningham, who developed the wiki. The whole idea, you could just go to a website and change it, and then everybody sees it that way. Well, he's working on the whole next generation of wikis, and it's about sustainability. He's on fire about this. He wants to take whole new wiki approaches to share innovations all around the world around this. I mean, imagine if we can link the creativity and the imagination so that the innovations and ideas are there instantly. I have no doubt that we can do that. But there's another piece that's at the core of this. We have to turn the entire dollar economy into a living economy. It's a dead economy. It's dead capital. We need to make it alive by actually engaging in economic transactions that are conscious and aware, loving, where you're learning from them. They're face-to-face, they're not abstract. Because capital now is weighing down people and communities all over the world. And as we try to pay back the debt or the needs of that capital, we're just burning everything up faster than we possibly can, whether it's oil, forests, grasslands. It can never be repaid. So we have to talk about how to let it go. I'll say it again. All that debt can never be repaid. And we can just talk about it, country to country, household to household, company to company, and sort it out like grown-ups, because I will not let the world burn up just because we can't talk about a social contract that is no longer serving anybody. We have to tear it up, and it's fine. Just try 100 different ways to tear it up. Think for yourself about what's fair. What's fair if an oil company like Exxon is worth $400 billion? Less than Apple, that's an interesting one. So just the last few months, it's less valuable than Apple. So what should happen to Exxon worth $400 billion? Well, you tell me. The answers could range from zero, just wipe it out tomorrow, to, well, maybe we have to buy it out in some way or help it make a transition. I don't care what answer you have, but to me, that's one of those key questions. Everything that's weighing down has to transition. Just let's get to work on every bit of it. Every bit of it that is a burden, that is causing us to lose our sense of dignity and worth, and that is destroying ecosystems. Don't stand for it. And decide for yourself what's fair. Decide for yourself what's good strategy to have a chance to make it happen sooner rather than later, so that we don't keep building coal-fired plants or destructive infrastructure at this late date. So I believe that we can regenerate the planet, that it is happening, and that we can even imagine biocultural regeneration, people, place, together, reintegrating, reconnecting, reweaving. People in place together. The ancient cultures that are still here, the ancient knowledge and languages, the whole rich complexity of human life in a given place. How does it evolve together? Using the wealth of what's there, the wealth of history and experience, and the particularities of place. So we can transform the dead part of the economy to a living economy. And we can also never give it as much power as we've given it now. We can gradually decenter it. There'll always be trading and dollars and so forth, but it doesn't ever, again, need to be the core of our species to the point it's endangered everything. It can become something much more modest, and we can supplement it with the most ancient economy, which is the gift economy, which is people just taking care of each other, and the commons. So, what I invite you to do now is pivot in this conference. It's been this incredible divergence of ideas, which is very healthy. Just all these incredible things people are trying, what's up for people, concepts, ideas, huge smorgasbord of great stuff. So maybe we can begin to pivot to how do we now really hold this very deeply and clearly in every cell of our bodies. Take this back to our communities and know what we are going to do, how we are going to serve life. How does that play out in food, particularly? How does it play out in all those things that connect to food? I mean, food is just such a great entry point. If we can truly feed ourselves well and joyfully, we have to reinvent that part of the economy. And you know what? That starts to touch everything else. If we can redo food, we redo oil and water, energy, we redo land, and reconnect as people. So the networks we create around food can easily become the starting point for any other kind of broader transformation. And likewise, for those of you who have started with broader transitions, maybe food can be a way to kind of re-energize and focus what you're trying to achieve. So I invite you to really begin a little bit of that convergent thinking. We don't need anything totally specific yet, but to begin to imagine, I want to go do this when I go home. I would love to hear about some of the things that you want to do when you go home that have been sparked by the conference. And for me, there are just all these practical issues for food around how do we get land available? How do we bring conscious financing, like slow money, to food, to those that want to grow good food? How do we provide training to the young people that want to farm? What kinds of organizations do we need to support and create to make this happen? And on an individual level, what do you want to do with your time in the service of this? What do you want to do with your money? What do you want to do with your own livelihood and your own food purchases? Those are all huge ways that you can have immediate impact. So this can go wherever you want to take it. Anything that's been sparked by the conference so far, and how you want to begin using this, wherever you want to take it. And Judy is going to help us have a nice conversation. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.
Every single dollar has to be engaged and turned around until it's moving in a way that is compassionate and grounded. So I've spent a lot of my work trying to deal with the fast money. And it just kind of makes your head spin. So how do you make the fast money that needs this huge return, how do you make it slow down or green it up? And it's a very complex question. I mean, we need to make our economy much more efficient. We can do incredible green buildings. We can green up industry. We can green up, redesign so much. And we have to do these other things simultaneously. So we need every bit of turning a Brookfield on its head and convincing Brookfield not to cut down the forest for X reason, but at the same time we also need to imagine a world not driven so much by that unbelievable relentless pace. So just as an example of just how do you even make a clear decision forward, I'm part of a research team. And it's a wonderful team, and it's a wonderful project. And what we're trying to do, though, is help the real estate industry value buildings in a way that includes ecosystem and social benefits. So if you build something magnificent where people feel more alive, healthy, productive if you build a building that has trees all through it, like this new skyscraper in Milan. It's a 25-story skyscraper that is just filled with a forest. I mean, you can't even imagine what's on the drawing boards all over the world. Biomimicry buildings that you can't tell, is it an ecosystem or a building? It's beautiful. And yet, we don't have time or money to do all of those things. We have to make all the crazy, dysfunctional buildings, patch those up, make those work. So even as we try to make these huge shifts and help industries reimagine the returns, that helps slow it down. But at the end of the day, it's all these other things. It's just going back to the heart and compassion. And the social innovation is much less capital intensive, much, much faster, and scales much more quickly than the green tech innovation. And there are two words that I'll leave you with why that's true: Facebook, Google. Those are the only two companies that have ever been worth $100 billion in 8 years. They're social innovations. There's no way if you're making something, you can drive it that quickly. Thank you all so much. Thank you for being at this conference. Thank you for caring. Thank you for making a stand. I do this every day of my life, guys. I mean, this is all that I care about. I don't ever really leave any conversation even with someone I'm just meeting or any room without raising the issue, because we all need to know this. So tell people, I'll ask you one thing. When you leave this, if you see some truth in the need to thrive, to be resilient, keep telling people, inviting them, and don't let them believe in an illusion. I mean, this is it. We are in the transition every day, every moment. Help people wake up, but in a joyful way. And good luck. Go get them. Thank you.
Thank you, Stuart.